Okay. All right. I want to welcome you all to another episode of the Building My Freedom Business podcast. My name is Eric, and today my guest is Dr. K. And Dr. K, I looked on his website. He calls himself an emotional health mentor, and we're going to take a deep dive into his journey and into how he currently helps people and who he helps. So, Dr. K, thank you so much for taking the time to spend time with me and share your knowledge and your wisdom with the listeners. And maybe, if possible, before we go, because I normally would like to do a little of a background story, but if someone at a party comes to you and says, what is it that you do? What would you say to them?
Sure. I help high achieving entrepreneurs and companies really learn how to optimize their emotional health for performance and really to avoid burnout. Because I think so many of us that are in that high achieving mindset, we're always looking for that next thing, that next level, level of achievement. But ultimately, we can't do that while feeling empty inside. And for us to be at our best, for us to serve at our best, we have to be at our best. And I believe that our emotional health is the key to all of it.
Man, the word burnout, I think many of us listening, including myself, will recognize that. It's that weird thing that we are so driven and we push ourselves often too far till we reach that burnout moment. So definitely want to go and take a deep dive into that. But so before you start doing this, could you tell me a little bit about your background story? How did you end up doing what you're currently doing? Have you always, or you haven't always been a doctor? At some point you became a doctor, but can you tell us a little bit about your journey up until now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually did not start in this career. It's something that I found, or maybe it found me. So originally coming out of my undergraduate, I had done a double major in applied economics and management and biology at Cornell University. And I started working on Wall Street after that. So mid 2000s for 8 years. So that was a fun time to be in that industry, with the financial collapse and everything else that went on. Yeah. But it was a really incredible experience as far as for me to understand, how does business work? How do corporations work? What is office life like? For the person that is working, 12 hours a day at minimum to sometimes 14, 16, sometimes 18 hours. Yeah. Right. And as is fairly common in that industry, what's life like? And, I just found myself in a very interesting position a few years into my career. So I was able to get promoted quite quickly. And so I found myself in a position where I had finally moved into my own apartment. And I was on the 30th floor of a brand new skyrise apartment in downtown Jersey City, right across the river from Manhattan, New York City. And it was such a beautiful view because I was facing the New Jersey side. There were no buildings at that time of that height. So I just had this clear view of the horizon. I could see the sunset. I could see all the weather patterns. It felt like I was on top of the world. It was an incredible feeling. I was able to pay off my undergraduate student loans. I was able to pay off my parents' credit card debt. I was blessed in so many ways. And I hated the man in the mirror. I was able to get all this success in my career, but personally, I was, significantly overweight. I was unhealthy. I was very lonely, couldn't, find the right relationship and everything else. And I just felt that I was always putting on a face to be that high performer, everything on the outside, and nobody knew the suffering that was going on the inside. And so at that point in time, I was starting to hit another rock bottom in my life. And just things happen for us if we just open our eyes to them. I saw my sister after a 3-month window of time. And in that 3 months, she had lost 30 pounds. Her cystic acne had cleared up. She looked amazing. And I was just at this low enough point that I said, okay, whatever you did, I'm going to do, knowing that no matter how crazy it was. So I asked her, so what did you do? You look incredible. She says, Yeah, I've just been eating a raw food, plant-based diet. Is it okay? What does that mean? I've just been eating fresh fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, just as they're found from the earth in their natural form. I said, "Oh, okay. You're crazy,
Yeah.
but I'm going to do it." And within 3 weeks, I was at the lowest weight I'd ever been as an adult.
Wow. Wow.
And that's when my mind opened, and it was all of a sudden, all the things that I thought were not possible for me, couldn't have the body I wanted, couldn't feel attractive, couldn't, you know, really get to the state of health that I knew I needed to be in. All of a sudden that started opening up, and I started, you know, diving more into how nutrition affects our overall health, but also our emotional health and everything that went into place. And I started discovering that I was inspiring people along the way through my own weight loss journey to take charge of their own health and start looking at the way that they saw themselves. And in the process, I just discovered I need to make this my career. I found out about naturopathic medicine. It's a licensed medical profession in about half of the states here in the U.S. And so I found out about it, and my sister at that point had just moved to Arizona to work down here, and she told me about a school that was here. Sounded great. I wanted to go to a place that had more sun, and boy, did I get it. And so I left my career there to go to medical school in my 30s at this point. And then while I was there, I realized nobody knows me. No, if there was ever a chance to reinvent who I was, if there was ever a chance for me to see myself as a different person and not just the previous version of me that has now lost weight, this was the time to do it. And I started outlining, what does Dr. K of the future look like? What are his habits, his routines? Who does he spend time with? What books does he read? What's his morning routine? What does he eat? How does he move his body? And all these things. And I started really designing who that person is. And then I started living into what that definition of that person was. And sure enough, that became my true self. I realized my true self. And in the process, I did attract the love of my life. We're married now. And it's been a launching pad for me to understand, okay, we spend all this time in life chasing joy, whether it's as an entrepreneur, whether it's in corporate world, whatever it is. We feel like if we can just get to that next point, then I'll be happy. And that day never comes, right? So now I help high achievers like myself stop chasing joy and begin living in wonder.
So anyone listening to this, I'm positive that there are many people who recognize themselves in a lot of the things that you said, including myself. Man, not being at the happy or at the weight where I would like to be, always tired, always rushing, all that sort of stuff. Trying to help me to understand, because I think if I look at myself, my biggest hurdle is is it the willpower? I mean, I'm always asking myself, because we all have different reasons why we eat. For example, I eat because it's a way how I can comfort myself very quickly. How do we, what if you start working with an entrepreneur, what will be like sort of the first step that you take with someone to get him to shift from that thing that he's always wanted, and every time he fails, at some point you said, I just do it. But if I have to think about eating seeds and raw food and stuff like that, it's like what you said. My goodness, my brain goes to, does that mean I cannot have Indian takeaway anymore, or anything like that?
Right.
What is sort of the first thing that you think someone should work on themselves, or what steps should someone take to start that process of change?
I think it really boils down to, what do you really want? What do you want in your life? And the biggest existential question that I think philosophers have been asking for as long as we've been human beings is, who am I? Right? Because the definition of who we are dictates how we behave, both conscious decisions and unconscious decisions. Sometimes we'll consciously go get the Indian food, which I still love, by the way, right? Sometimes we'll consciously go for those things. But then there's also the unconscious, where we're just busy, we're stressed, and we don't even think about it. We just reach for the snacks and just start popping chips or whatever it is into our mouth before we even realize what's going on.
Mm.
And the reason is that we're always going to take action that is most consistent with who we believe we are.
Mm.
So if we say I'm going on a diet, if we say I'm fat, I'm going on a diet, right? New Year's is coming up as the time of we're recording this in a couple of months. So that's a time when a lot of people will jump into that. But there's so many diets that work. There's so many self-help programs that work. There's so many habit formation things that work. But the thing that stops us is that definition of who we are. So what I tell my clients and my students in my group programs is, and I harp on this all the time, you will never say any more powerful words to yourself than the ones that come after I am. I am not, whatever it is, right?
Mm.
If you say, I am unhealthy, if you say, I am unhappy, I'm not enough, right? All of these things, we're going to make them true. We're going to make them true through self-sabotage. We're going to make them true in various different ways. However, if we start saying, okay, I'm not going on this diet, I am incorporating some of these foods slowly, surely, right? Because I'm a healthy person. I am a person who believes in the greater vision of myself. I am a person with a mission in life. You know, as entrepreneurs, we have a reason that we're building the businesses that we are, right? If we focus on that and we understand that there are people who need what we have to offer, who are we to stand in the way of ourselves to make that vision a reality? We have to see ourselves as a different person. So when I go back to, 10 years ago, when I made that diet change, and sure, it's shifted many times since then, right? But at that time, it was the mindset shift that was the huge component of that. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't say, okay, I'm quitting day one. Like this is day one of a, exercise program, day one of a diet, whatever. I just said, I'm just going to start eating this way. This is just who I'm going to be going forward. I'm going to see what happens. And you know what? At that point, it just sells itself. You start feeling better. You start creating momentum. Sometimes we feel like we're driving a car in the wrong direction. If we're driving a car in the wrong direction, how do you turn it around in the right direction? Do you suddenly keep your foot on the gas pedal and at 100 miles an hour, right? Turn it around? No, you have to let go of the gas. You have to start hitting the brakes, slow down, turn the car around, then start accelerating. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. You didn't get here overnight. It's going to take time to unwind it, both the mental side, right? And the physical side of it as well. But when we give ourselves enough patience, we give ourselves enough grace, we can find the self-love to make all these things happen, then change naturally takes place because we start living into the vision of the ideal version of ourselves.
Wow. So as you're talking, so many thoughts going round my head, I was thinking, and as I've got you here, when we're talking together, I thought I can bring it up. Normally I don't talk much about myself, but in my situation, and this is always the story, because I'm hearing you say how we speak to ourselves is extremely powerful and important. And I assume that can be powerful in a positive way, but also powerful in a negative way. Because if I listen to the story tape that goes on in my head all the time, is that when my now 19-year-old son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5, man, my life changed. I think for a period of 10 years, I had no sleep whatsoever. And so the story that I tell myself now is, man, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. And I deserve to be tired. So, but what I hear you say, and tell me if I got it wrong or right, is it is important to slow down, and it is important to give yourself grace and not just yank it straight away around in one go, but take your time and start building little steps. Am I right in sort of hearing that? I know it's possibly way more complicated and deeper than that, but
absolutely. We somehow think that, especially the things that we've gone through for such a long period of time, we think that all of a sudden, tomorrow, day after, next week, I'm suddenly going to change that and everything's going to, but it's just not realistic. If we can just make one step with consistency, so whatever that is. So I talk about what I call the 5 pillars of emotional health.
Yeah.
Right. See, these are the 5 areas that I focus on with my clients, with my students. And it doesn't mean that we do all 5 of them at once. We do them in pieces, right?
Yeah.
Could you
say something more about that?
Absolutely. So the 5 pillars of emotional health. Number 1 is your psychology. So this is how your thought patterns, your default thought patterns, the tape that you mentioned that goes on in your mind, the way you talk to yourself, your emotional intelligence, your ability to understand yourself, your ability to understand other people, right? Your default belief patterns about yourself and the world. History of trauma affects our psychology. All these things play into, how we think, act, and feel. Number 2 is our relationships. So just like optimizing our psychology and our self-talk, we also have to optimize our relationships. We're the average of the 5 people and ideas that we spend the most time with. That has a drastic effect on our emotional health. So if we're talking about who do we surround ourselves with, are we, 95% of people in this world are past protectors. We're wired, our brain, to protect what we have gone through in the past, what we have become. That's why people rarely change their musical tastes, later in life, rarely change their political views later in life, because we're always, they're in a state. And by the way, this is biologically driven and it's meant for safety, right? There's nothing wrong with it. It's just meant for safety to protect the framework of how we understand the world, right? Because as children, we don't have a concept of anything and we slowly put the pieces together. So by the time you get later in life, you're kind of protecting that foundation, because if that were to get rocked, now all of a sudden you're having to put all the pieces back together. It's a lot of effort, right? But only 5% of people are growth seekers, the ones that are constantly looking to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. And I was a past protector and I had to push myself to become a growth seeker, finding ways to make ourselves uncomfortable so that we can grow, right? Learning new skills, spending time with people with opposing views, right? Trying to understand, seek to understand rather than blame, seek to understand rather than to really, push people away. But you're really looking around you for people that they're reading books, they're going to seminars, they're talking about the things that they're learning rather than, your traditional vices, I suppose, right? Yeah. So spending time with those kind of growth seeking individuals is incredibly powerful to boosting our emotional health, boosting our quality of life. Number 3, nutrition. So 90% of the neurotransmitters that the chemical messengers that regulate how we think, act, and feel are either created, regulated in our gut by the bacteria that live in our gut. There are actually 100 trillion bacterial cells that live in our gut. We have 100 million nerve endings, nerves that we find in our brain and the rest of our body. 100 million nerve endings in our gut, the enteric nervous system. Our gut is almost like a second brain, and it is regulated by the bacteria that live in there. What do they live on? The foods that we eat. The right foods will promote the right bacteria. The wrong foods will promote ones that can lead us toward, anxiety, lead us toward depression. Doesn't mean it's guaranteed. No, of course not. But you want to give yourself the best chance. And so optimizing your nutrition, eating high fiber, whole plant foods, no artificial chemicals, low refined foods, low animal products, like appropriate amount for each person, whatever it is. But high fiber foods are critical for improving our gut health and therefore our emotional health. So that's number 3 is nutrition. Number 4 is sleep, because high achievers, it's like the first thing I got to get things done, wake up early, stay up late, whatever it is. But our brain requires sleep for its own self-healing, for processing the day's events, committing things to long-term memory, for mood stabilization. If you want to be emotionally resilient, when things happen, instead of getting knocked down and unable to, be our best, maybe we lash out at people, whatever it is, when things get stressful. Instead of that, if we're emotionally resilient, we're able to accept, okay, what just happened, process it. How do I best respond? That's emotional resilience. And if we don't have sleep, high quality sleep, that goes out the window. And, as a recovering person who gave up sleep for years, that's something that is ultra critical and not negotiable any longer for me. And, I make a point of it for the people I work with. And then number 5 pillar of emotional health is body movement. Motion dictates emotion. Our ability to move our body, and it doesn't have to be in the form of exercise, constant low grade motion. Get a standing desk, put a treadmill under it, walk a little bit during the day, right? Step outside, getting time outside, especially in the morning, to reset your circadian rhythm, your body clock. These are all ways of optimizing your emotional health. So now to go back to your original thing, right? About, the words that you tell yourself and, just doing one thing at a time. Also, a big part of it is, like in your case, what are the ways that raising your son over those years has made you a better person, right?
Yeah.
What are the things that have that situation that you found yourself in and then you embraced, right? What has that allowed you to do over the years that you wouldn't have been able to do otherwise?
Yeah.
Because I really believe that the moment that we can truly not just accept our past, but really embrace it and say, this has made me great in all these ways. Sure, it has taken its toll in other ways, like fatigue, right? But it has made me great in all these ways. It's made me stronger. It's made me more compassionate. It's made me more understanding, more able to adapt to whatever, right? All those things. If we can focus on that and say, okay, this is a gift to be in this circumstance, that I can raise this wonderful person, right? And see his gifts, which now allow me to see other people's gifts as they are, all those things, right? Now your focus goes away from I'm so tired and it goes toward I'm strong.
Yeah.
And there's meaning. So when we can create the positive meaning from the challenges in our lives and really own it, then as we move forward, we become unstoppable.
I resonate with so many things you say there, Dr. K. And as this is not a personal therapy session, I won't continue down that path. However, it is great to talk about it, because I think us men, particularly men, I'm not saying that women don't do, but we're kind of, particularly entrepreneurs, men who are entrepreneurs, we keep feelings, thoughts in. And entrepreneurship is also quite a lonely place from time to time. So we don't talk often. And I think that is something, maybe we hide also within our entrepreneurship, because it's quite a nice, safe little world that we can, protect ourselves from whatever is going on out there. So I really appreciate your words. And I think, at a deep down level, I know what you're saying, but it's always good to hear it again. And I love your, part of my wife's and my life, the way we live, is that we definitely look at what it has given us, so many good things. But thank you for reminding me of that. So can you tell me a little bit about the process? How do people find you? I mean, do you do specific processes to draw people in or to get on people's radar? What do you do?
Yeah, so I do have social media content. I have over 100 videos on YouTube, and there's Instagram, other things as well. But to talk about a little bit more on the business side, what I found interesting from you talking about emotional health. So online entrepreneurship, I think there's one area of online entrepreneurship that sells very well, and that is teaching online entrepreneurship. in some capacity, right? Whether you're teaching, whether it's certain platforms of social media, whether it's marketing, whether it's funnels, whatever, right? That when you have a startup entrepreneur that is trying to build a business online, we understand the value of investing in guidance so that we don't have to waste time and money making mistakes. So that I thought would extend to other avenues. And what I found was for the realm of emotional health was not the case. Sure, people will engage in content, but in terms of them translating into hiring me was a lot harder, because still, know, like, and trust. We need to know, like, and trust before we'll buy anything from anybody. But to have some of the deep conversations, like even the one that we're having, and then to even go further and like in my emotional health mastery program, it requires a level of know, like, and trust that's even further. So what I found was that in order to really get kickstarted, I had all this stuff, the online components, but what I ended up doing was I joined a local BNI networking group, and happens to be the best group in Arizona. So that helps. But to be able to meet people face to face, especially in a post-COVID or post-pandemic shutdown world, right? It's still in the middle of it, but in terms of getting back together, being able to connect with people face to face, people started understanding like, okay, you know what, I could really use this, especially talking to other entrepreneurs, because really with business, right? We're always looking at productivity, because more productivity from the people that work for you equals, more output, more revenue, etc. Happy people are more productive. We know this. It's common sense, right? But there's three pillars to driving that productivity. There's skill set, there's process, and there's mindset. So the skill set is, what we hire for, right? We're looking for people that have this skill, or maybe, and it could be full-time, could be part-time. Hey, I make videos. I'd like to hire a video editor with such and such skill set, right? The next is process. So especially when we have a company and we have processes set up, we are always looking to optimize it, because if we can optimize process, we're optimizing productivity, we're optimizing output. But what rarely gets addressed is mindset, right? Because you can have the right person with the right skills, you can have them doing the right process, but if they're dealing with unbelievable stress in their life, they're not feeling good about themselves, if they're constantly dealing with anxiety or panic attacks that they don't feel comfortable telling people about, or whatever it is, right? Your skill set and process don't matter. So what I help companies do is really understand how to create a strong culture of emotional health in their workforce. And there's a couple examples I can share with you on that and how that's worked. But really, that third leg of the stool, the mindset, is where I'm an integral part for them.
I would love to hear an example of one of your people that your companies or that you've worked with, but just briefly before we go down that path, it's really interesting what you're saying there, because in one of my businesses, because we have a membership business for education, but my background is I'm an expert family coach, and I work with families at risk of breakdown. And where I made a difference within organizations, rather than the social workers were trained to go into families and just telling them what they needed to do to change. And when I came into the families, I didn't do that, but I worked on their mindset. I worked on their thinking, the questions they asked themselves. And that made just that incredible shift and change. And I could hear that in the stories that you just shared here as well. And the other thing is also, there was another thing. This is the second time this week that someone told me I joined a local business group, because I have pivoted recently from the family coach direction towards really niching down to entrepreneurs who are highly driven and successful, but whose relationship with their partner, with the spouse, is at breaking point.
Right.
So, and that's a specific area because that is where I specialize within the broken families, and I saw that link. But I also, how do you meet? How do you get your services out there? And you said, yeah, meet people. And I think that's one thing that anyone listening can take away from this. Simply connect with people. Go out there and connect with people, you know, who run businesses, if those are your future customers. But please, Dr. K, tell me an example of an organization or someone that you work with.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, I want to double down on one of your points there. You know, it's very sexy to think about, you know, funnels and the ads that feed the funnels and your highly converting landing pages and then a passive income and all that good stuff. And scalability is important. It's great. All those things.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to do it old school. Don't be afraid to go meet people, right? Understand their needs, and really form real human connections. Because especially right now, people are really wanting that. People want real connection. There's so much noise out there that, hey, listen, why don't you can, especially if you're early on, start with people that you can meet face to face. You can serve them in part or wholly online, right? And then grow from there. But, you know, you don't have to always start with the end in mind. It's still something that I preach often for different things, but, you know, don't be afraid to you know, it doesn't seem like a very exciting way. Oh yeah, join a local network. Like, find a good one, right? Find one that really cares about one another, and go with it from there. But it is really important to think outside the box sometimes and just say, like, how can I make a real connection with people, however that looks. So there's, as far as working with companies, there's really three ways that in my emotionally healthy company program, which you can find on my website, drkarthikramanan.com. There's a work with me link, and then the emotionally healthy company. So there's three components to it. Emotional health mastery, which is my one-to-one emotional health mentoring program. So that is for the owners, executives, the decision makers. And this is an important point. The companies I work with, the people running the company have to understand the value of emotional health, not just for the organization, but for themselves. If they are willing to do the work themselves, and that's the real differentiating factor between the ones that I work with that have great results and the ones that don't. The ones that have that understanding that their own journey, that they're in this with their employees too, because we all have our stuff, right? We all have our self-imposed limitations. And if we can work to become better versions of ourselves and really uncover what's already there, you're not discovering something that's new, and like you are already who you've always needed to be. It's really just uncovering that truth. So if the leaders are in it, everybody else understands the value of it. So emotional health mastery, you know, a culture of care really does start at the top. So the one-to-one coaching for the owners and executives is a key component of that. The second part is in-office workshops. So they'll hire me to come in and do workshops that are, you know, and I have some set ones, some set topics that are important to cover, but sometimes depending on the client, I can even tailor a presentation and a workshop. It's interactive to what they need. And then the third part is what my Insiders Club, which is I have online workshops for, you know, entrepreneurs, individuals that are tailored to different topics. So right now I'm doing an 8-week self-care program called Supporting Self. At the start of the year, doing, you know, talking about pillar number 3, nutrition, good mood, plant food. I have another one, end self-criticism, coming out later in the year. So there's a rotating, so the Insiders Club has, you can join any of those workshops live, and then also have the video archives for the previous ones. So that way people can continue their growth even when, let's say, I'm not in their office presenting, whatever the case is. So those three components make up the emotionally healthy company program. So there was one company I worked with, one business owner. So she runs a branding and marketing agency, and been in business for a few years. And so she, you know, self-admittedly is like, yeah, I'm probably your like ideal client. I need, I'm always so hard on myself, and that sort of thing. But she's very high achieving, and she treats her employees very well, always trying to give them the best opportunities. But she also, in doing so, she also takes on maybe a little bit more than she should, rather than doing more of the trusting, delegating, that sort of thing. At least initially had been like but she's like classic somebody you want to work for, because she'll take the blame when you do something wrong in front of the client, right? So it's like praise you publicly, criticize privately, that kind of thing. All those, but nonetheless, finding that it was taking its toll on her after quite some time, many years of this, right? So recently she told me that already this was back in September, so in 9 months she had doubled her sales from all of 2020.
Wow.
And so I was very curious. So what do you think has been the main reason? Because we've done the one-to-one, we've done the presentations for her group. They all have access to my Insiders Club. And so she actually asked her employees, like, what do you think has been the real difference in me? Which I think is incredible, leadership insight, to say, let me ask the people that work with me the most and ask them. And she's created a culture where they can freely talk to her about these things and not feel like, well, I better say what she wants to hear, things like that. So they said that the work that they've been doing on a personal level, right, addressing the things from each of their pasts, addressing the 5 pillars of emotional health, addressing, we talked about earlier, giving ourselves a little bit of grace, that has directly allowed them to say, okay, well, when something went wrong and one client got pissed off and said, okay, we're going to leave, in the past, they'd be like, oh, no, how can we do it? Well, they eat the loss, whatever, and then move forward. Now they can be a little bit more selective, because if it's a client that maybe wasn't a good culture fit to work with to begin with, they said, okay, we're sorry, we'll make it right for this, and you feel free to go on your way. And in doing so, they've been able to attract the people they love working with, start saying goodbye to some of the clients that they didn't enjoy working with. And because of that, again, happy employees are productive employees. That includes the owners, right? The sales have improved drastically. So I think it's just a prime example of, like, just look at the basics. We often think in business that it's something that we have to do in order to get to the next level, right? As a business owner, as an entrepreneur. But the reality is who do we have to be? It's not what do we have to do, who do we have to be? And I think this ties into what you talk about as well with the relationships, right? Who do you have to be at home so that you have a quality relationship? Because if you don't have that, it's going to carry over into everything else that you do. Absolutely. And vice versa. Things from work are going to carry over to home. So if you can really address the who you are as an entrepreneur and your own emotional well-being, that directly translates into better productivity and ultimately more successful business.
I mean, how have you moved from your first original job to doing this? I mean, that's just incredible, isn't it? The shift from being on, what do you call it when you first worked?
Wall Street.
From Wall Street to doing this, man. That's just an amazing shift.
I'll be honest, it's been challenging because, as you know, entrepreneurship is you come face to face with every fear you've ever had, especially when it comes to finances early on, right? You're like, how am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to do, all these things, because you're putting every ounce of resource and energy into making this vision come true. That was an adjustment that was definitely challenging, but at the same time, my wife and I, she runs her own medical practice as well. We're both entrepreneurs. We were coming back from our personal training session with our trainer this morning, and just having the conversation that, he can see people between certain hours, and it doesn't really line up with the person who's working a 9 to 5 or an 8 to 5 or whatever. Right. And it just reminded me, man, I'm so blessed to be an entrepreneur and be able to set my schedule around certain things. And, you know, it goes both ways. You get the flexibility, but you don't get all the certainty. But if you can embrace that, and you can always understand that, yeah, it's just the cost to play the game. But if you have a mission and you have a reason to do what you're doing, your why is so important, right? That is what carries you day to day, minute to minute going forward. Once you can really embrace that, you know, I've heard people say, you know, entrepreneurship is a gene. You're either born with it or you're not. And I think it was Tom Bilyeu, who, you know, of impact theory. I think he was one of the first people I had heard say, no, I believe everything is learnable. You can learn anything, you know, and I find that that's definitely true. I think if we go about it saying, you know, I can't do it, then yeah, if you say you can't do it, you can almost guarantee you won't do it. If you say you can do it, it doesn't mean it will happen, but at least you give yourself a chance, right? So you gotta make sure that you're always focusing on the empowering truth of who you are.
Well, Dr. K, I'm realizing the time, but I tell you, I think I can talk for hours and hours with you. So much wisdom and so much recognition within my own soul, in my own heart when I listen to you. And I'm definitely going to explore the things that you offer and see if I would fit in somewhere there. But if anyone listening says, man, I want to learn more about this Dr. K, about what he offers, can you tell me where, and I know you said it already and I will put it in the show notes, but remind everyone again, where should they go to learn more about the services that you offer? And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, is there a particular place where you hang out online the most, or is it email? But please share that information.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to drkarthikramanan.com, which you'll have in the link, or you know, if you're listening to it on audio and you just want to remember, DRK, Dr. K, NMD, naturopathic medical doctor, drknmd.com. That'll also take you to the same place. And on my website, there's a Work with Dr. K menu right at the top. And that will show you the different ways. So there's 4 ways of working with me, either one-to-one coaching, which I see a limited number of people for that. It's a 6-month, pretty intense program, but for the right people, it's a remarkable experience for both of us, really. Number 2 is the Insiders Club, access to all the workshops, all the online group coaching workshops. And then you can also join any of the individual workshops separately. That's number 3. And then number 4, through the Emotionally Healthy Company employer benefit program. So those are all outlined on my website. You can learn about each one of those. And then, yeah, if you can always email me, but I think probably the easiest way for social media, go to my Instagram, dr.karthikramanan, and you can always DM me on Instagram. I'm happy to respond there, just because, you know, we can leave a little voice message back and forth, that kind of stuff. It just makes it a little bit easier. All
right, Dr. K. So thank you so much for your time. I'll put everything in the show notes, all the links. And I appreciate your knowledge and thank you for your energy that you bring and for everything that you do for the entrepreneurs out there. I think what you offer is so enriching for anyone's life. And that is what I've really taken from this. Even throughout this conversation, it's almost like I felt you slowed me down in my thinking to really rethink, who do I want to be? And I think that's a good question, you know, but like you said in the beginning, who do I really want? You know, who am I? You know, and I am, and fill that in. So yeah, thank you for all the food for thought, and I wish you an incredible day.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate the opportunity to come in and speak to you and your audience, and it's been wonderful. I appreciate you and honor you for what you're doing for entrepreneurs and their families as well. So thank you.
All right. Take care.